An upper level low pressure that you can clearly see here on water vapor satellite spinning over Baja California, moving to the east. This is going to be bringing some flooding concerns over the next few days across portions of Texas and the deep south. Widespread rain, isolated severe weather, but really the flood risk is the greatest concern with this. We do have a pretty interesting May pattern change coming along that's going to bring very different weather compared to April. We're going to get some big time troughing out in the eastern US. Today in the weather world, we'll break down the flood threat, but we'll also look into this deeper pattern change and the possible ramifications this will bring to May and to severe weather season, which is going to be peaking soon. We have some interesting developments in that area. The biggest thing we're watching today though will certainly be this flood threat. We have a 2 out of 4 slight risk of flooding from the Weather Prediction Center from central Texas all the way to central Louisiana, with the marginal risk extending a little bit further all the way toward Georgia near Atlanta. So really flooding is a primary threat. It's not going to be a widespread major flood, but in these areas locally significant rain, ponding on the roads, low water crossing closures are possible, and we could get a few river rises in some of these cases. It's not out of the question that somewhere in this zone, probably across southeast Texas, maybe into central Louisiana, we get an upgrade to a moderate risk of flooding. That's a level 3 out of 4, slightly more serious impacts would be expected, but for now a general slight risk is good to cover the threat. So let's check out the radar. It's going to be a very wet day across the south, so even if you don't get any flooding, it's still going to be a very damp day. As we're waking up Friday morning, we're waking up to widespread rain, some heavy rain across Texas, so Austin down to Houston. We can see some corridors of pretty heavy rain. Some of these thunderstorms could be training over the same areas, anywhere in between Austin and Houston, so that's where some of the heavier flood risk sets up if we get training storms. Through the day, still some more heavy rain across central Texas, but the rain will slowly migrate to the east. Notice across Louisiana, the rain will be picking up by 8 a.m., so a very messy morning commute is possible from New Orleans all the way up to Monroe, Louisiana. Additional rain developing across Texas as we get into the noontime hour, and then everything continues to gradually move east, but just look how wide the rain shield is. We're going to get several of these rounds over the same areas from start to finish, just because the rain shield and the general storm system is very wide and far reaching. Any of these heavier thunderstorms, brief strong to severe storm, can't be ruled out. I'll talk more about that in a minute, but really the bigger threat is heavy rain over these same areas. We're now going into Friday evening. The rain will be moving east, more heavy showers over Louisiana, and then eventually spreading into Alabama, the panhandle of Florida, and Georgia. Texas will be drying out Friday evening, and then overnight we're talking about a band of heavy rain possible in New Orleans and Mississippi. And you can see as we're waking up on Saturday morning, some of the heavy rain will finally clear off into Georgia and Florida. So Tallahassee all the way up to Albany, central Georgia, you could be dealing with some of the heavier rain, and then eventually it continues off to the east and the north portions of the Carolinas. It could be a bit of a wet day later on Saturday before everything generally moves offshore. Central Florida, you could be getting some rain late day on Saturday, certainly though not as heavy as further out to the west. So one of the biggest things lacking with this rain event is instability, and this is why the severe weather threat is lower. We actually have a pretty strong cold front. I'll talk more about the colder air behind it in a minute, but this is bringing really some stable air and limiting instability. This map is the energy in the atmosphere, and notice all the energy is really relegated to the coast. Some of these green and blue colors down here that's trying to come up, that colder air at the surface is really preventing it from doing so. So we still can't rule out an isolated strong to severe storm. Gusty winds, large hail is possible, but nothing compared to the severe weather outbreaks we've been experiencing the past few days. Florida, you'll probably have the best chance for slightly more organized severe weather, but in general this does not look like that conducive of a severe weather risk. As such, we only have a marginal 1 out of 5 risk of severe weather, a pocket from Houston to San Antonio, and then another from New Orleans all the way near Tallahassee. So it's refreshing. We're finally getting a break, and we're getting some rain with it. On your day Saturday, the risk shifts slightly to the east, Jacksonville, Tallahassee, up near Tampa in Florida. Again, hail, wind, main threat, very low tornado risk, and definitely not a severe weather outbreak. The bigger threat is definitely the heavy rain from those repeated training rounds over and over. By the 3rd or 4th round of thunderstorms over these same areas, that's when we see the most flooding concerns. With low water crossing closures, some river rises are possible. Always remember, turn around, don't drown, and if you are under a flood warning, just stay at home. That's the safest spot you can be, and try not to travel. The HRRR model, this is just one model, so it won't be perfect, but it does show a stripe of heavier rain in between Austin and Houston. So this is one region where a slightly higher and more concentrated flooding concerns are possible, but this whole broad area, we expect at least 1 to 3 inches of rain, and then isolated amounts of 2 to 4 inches, maybe even up to 6 inches in some of these bullseyes. So that's why we do want to stay weather aware for a locally significant flood threat that's possible. I will say we never want the flooding, but we do desperately need the rain in this area. So the rain is on the whole a welcome thing. That stripe, that footprint of the storm system where the rain is expected, these are exactly the areas that are in some pretty deep drought, especially in the southeast. The southeast has been in very extreme to exceptional drought. We're in some of our top driest years for many of the major cities down here. This is why we've been having having some pretty big wildfire concerns. So this rain is very welcome news. Even though back into Texas, Louisiana, some of this heavier rain will certainly help chip away at this drought. Now, even if you're in drought, you can still experience flooding. And in fact, drought makes the soil harder, which makes it harder to absorb water. So drought can even enhance flooding a little bit. But aside from the short-term flooding problem, long-term this rain is exactly what we need over some areas that are pretty parched, especially in the recent months. Alright, so that's our little storm system to the south. Let's zoom out a little bit, talk about the bigger country. Something we'll be noticing over the next few days is some cooler air coming in, especially after the very crazy severe weather week we've had, all the warm, humid, unstable air. It's going to feel a bit of a nice change. It certainly will not feel like the beginning of May though. It'll feel much more like maybe early March than May. We're going to have some colder air moving into the central and eastern US. You can see this core below average temperatures in the south. This is associated with that rain, so the rain's going to keep things down. But this pool of colder air moving into the Midwest, this is just some upper level troughing and a piece of the polar vortex breaking out. Believe it or not, that can still happen in early May, so it's going to bring some seasonably cool temperatures. Nothing crazy cold, but for May it's definitely going to be pretty chilly out there. Some of this cooler air lingers through the weekend, so if you're a fan of the cooler weather like I am, this is going to be a perfect weekend for you. But especially some of the mornings in the north will take you by surprise a little bit. Make sure you know where the jacket is. Don't put it away just quite yet. Here's what we're tracking for temperatures on your day Friday. Highs in the 40s in the north, 50s a little bit further south, so that's pretty chilly. But look at the lows. Saturday morning, some freeze is possible. Anyone in this light blue, that's where the freezing line is. So Wisconsin, portions of Michigan and Minnesota will be in the 30s, very cold. For your high temperatures, we'll get a bit of a warm up in the plains into the 60s. Perfect feeling day with some drier air moving in. Really make sure you get outside and enjoy it. But look at the Midwest, we're stuck in the 30s and 40s for highs. Sunday morning, a bit more of a widespread freeze is expected across the Appalachian Mountains, interior New England, and portions of the Midwest. So if you have some early gardens out, definitely make sure you're paying attention to the weather, covering up the plants if needed. Here's some of those cold weather advisories we have. We have freeze warnings, frost advisories, freeze watches across Michigan, another portion of frost advisories in the Northeast. I expect these will be expanded a little bit. The reason why the National Weather Service is issuing these is because growing season has started. We're pretty deep into spring and we're getting a late season freeze. Make sure to cover up those plants. That'll really be the main impact, agricultural and gardening. Believe it or not, this cold stretch this weekend might just be the beginning of a bit of a longer period of colder weather expected. We have a very interesting May weather pattern setting up. So look at the upper level atmosphere, the weather pattern, and we can notice we have some pretty deep troughing moving into the Midwest and much of the central and eastern US. All these darker blue colors up there, that's some areas of low pressure coming in with this larger scale troughing, as a piece of that polar vortex that I mentioned will be settling into Canada. So this is what might not just bring cooler weather this weekend, but into the first week of May. We could get an extended stretch of some of this cooler weather as long as this trough remains in place. Not only will that bring cooler weather, this will also limit severe weather concerns. So that's some good news. Severe weather won't be completely off the table, but the environment just looks way less favorable than what it has been. Now eventually, as we go deeper into May, this will change. When this happens, this could bring back some warmer air, also bring back the severe weather concerns. But at least in the near term, at least for the next week, some cooler air will be settling in and some more stable conditions across most of the US. So going back to the temperature anomalies, notice all that cooler air sticking around this weekend. But if I play it even further, we could get another wave of cooler air as we get into next week. Notice this second burst of cold air moving into portions of the north as we get into Monday and Tuesday, and this could eventually spread across portions of the Midwest, the Northeast, and even make it pretty far down south. It could even touch the Gulf Coast with another late season cold blast coming in. It's all relative, so it's not winter cold, but definitely for May, again, it's gonna feel pretty unusual. If you're a cold weather fan, enjoy it. We will not get many more of these until really the next season, but another burst of cooler weather possible this weekend. Anyone east from the Rockies, not just a cooler weekend, but maybe some more colder blasts through the week could be expected. And as I mentioned, the severe weather risk is really limited. This is a thunderstorm energy. I'm gonna play it through the whole next week, and we get little pop-ups, little blips of energy here and there, but on the whole, there's not really any major signals for a big time severe weather outbreak, at least through the middle of the week. Now as we get into the end of the week, it looks like we could get a little more moisture, a little more energy return down to the south, so something we'll be watching. Until that happens though, we're gonna get a nice break, and May is a peak of severe weather season. Anytime we can get a break of severe weather in this month is definitely a win, because May is when some of the most volatile and some of the most widespread severe weather and strong tornadoes happen. Enjoy the break for the first week, because unfortunately later into the month, severe weather is definitely returning. We are definitely not done with severe weather season just yet. Hey, I do want to point out it is a new month, May, and we do have a new monthly outlook, so let's just look into this a little bit. On average for the month of May, the Climate Prediction Center is favoring some warmer temperatures across the west, so this pattern is definitely present for the first week, but this might continue even into the middle of the month where we get some high pressure. We also have some cooler air that's possible across across portions of the northeast. Most of this cooler air will come within the first 2 weeks with that colder weather pattern I'm expecting. So a bit of an interesting change that we're seeing, and then we kind of have that middle equal chances in between these two air masses. While this pattern is in place for the first half of the month, that would tend to quiet down severe weather. We do expect a flip though toward the end of the month, and that's why we definitely aren't done with severe weather season. In terms of precipitation, we're tracking some drier weather across the north, but notice we have this stretch of wetter weather also across Texas, portions of the deep south, and a bullseye really across New Mexico. A lot of this wetter weather is actually fueled by that weekend storm that's expected. Even beyond that though, some more precipitation will be expected. May is typically a pretty wet month across the country, and it could be even wetter than normal across the south. We'll have way more details as we get closer. So yeah, that's all the weather we have. For the first time in a while, we have no major imminent weather concerns, which is pretty nice. Now, we don't want to discount that flood threat in the south. Definitely make sure you're staying weather aware. That's really highest across East Texas into Louisiana. For the rest of us though, some cooler weather coming in and a break from severe weather, at least for the near term future. When severe weather concerns start returning, I'll have more updates and more videos. So if you don't want to miss that, consider subscribing. Thanks for watching. Hope everyone stays safe out there, enjoy some of this more pleasant weather, and I'll see you next time.